Hello to everyone watching this video. My name is Leighton Bass, and today I'm going to be sharing a reflection about a bit of my experience in the sport marketing and management class. Over the semester of fall 2025 and winter, I've not only learned new academic concepts when it comes to sports marketing, but also discovered a bit more about myself as a person, including some of my personal strengths, some challenges I have in terms of this course, but in general, taking courses, and the kind of person I want to be in life, but also when it comes to the sports industry. This reflection aims at bringing together some of the lessons I learned from this class and over the semester, some of the progress I've made since the start of the year, as well as some of the goals that I look at carrying forward into the next semesters, but as well as into the sports industry beyond this. Now, before diving into the reflection about strengths, weaknesses, and those sort of topics, I wanted to do a quick look back at how I felt going into the class, and ultimately, when I'm making this reflection, why I decided to make a video format rather than the traditionally known writing format of making the reflection. Firstly, going into the class, I had high expectations as I have a love for marketing that I got from my parents, especially my dad, who has been in the marketing industry his whole career, but also my love for sports, so it seemed like a no-brainer to take this class. Professor Scott I had also had as a professor over the summer when I was retaking one of my other SPMA classes, and I had a great experience with him, but I had issues with the final reflection portion, specifically being able to write that much about myself. Historically, reflecting has not been my greatest strength, and it's been pointed out by people. So when I was thinking about the final reflection and redoing it for Scott based on feedback I had, I decided, why would I write something when I want to? After deciding that I would be doing a video format of reflecting instead of a written formal version of reflection, the final portfolio reflection appeared to me as more of something as a learning opportunity instead of the traditional view of, oh, I don't want to reflect back on this. I don't want to write all this out. And it then became something that almost I was looking forward to for my personal learning. With that being said, I want to reflect back a little bit on the class itself now. And firstly, I want to reflect back on if I was talking to a friend or I was talking to a future student, what advice I would have for them based on my errors and also what I want to be doing moving forward. Firstly, if a friend asks about the subject, I would tell them that it's a lot more practical and eye-opening than you would think it is. When people think about sport management as a whole, but as sport marketing, they think, oh, it's sports, it's useless. But the idea of sport marketing just comes from the idea of marketing itself. They're interlinked together. It's about how understanding sports organizations operate, how they are able to connect with their fans, like businesses connect with their consumers, and how they compete in a constantly evolving industry similar to business. It teaches you not to think as a sports fan necessarily, but to think like a marketer, as well as a strategist, and then ultimately a manager all at once. With this being said, my advice to future students would be to engage early on in the class. The more you're able to participate in the class, the easier the assessments later on down the road, such as when you have to reflect back on the overall class, becomes. And this is advice that I want to give myself as well, going into the next semester and even the years prior, as sometimes I can find it harder to engage in a class early on, as it might be nerves or something like that, but I want to challenge myself to engage early on to make it easier when I'm doing final projects. As well, make sure you're able to relate to concepts to real sports or events. Everyone has a favorite sports team or favorite sporting event or even a favorite sport. When you're able to bring that passion into class, it makes it a lot easier. Like when I bring my passion of hockey, or specifically the Edmonton Oilers, which I have a jersey behind my shoulder of, it makes doing a big essay a lot easier when I can just point out the Oilers. Finally, for myself especially, and for future students, staying organized and on top of projects is very important. I have a very bad habit historically of procrastinating projects to the last second. And even something like this, I'm not handing it until the later dates of the project. Moving forward, I want to try and keep pushing myself to be earlier and earlier on the project because it removes a lot less stress for myself. And I advise the same for future students taking the class, to stay on top of the reflective portfolio, Take notes, even a small note or an idea every day or a couple times a week makes that final project and just revisiting everything you learned over a semester a whole lot easier. With this in mind, I want to continue thinking about not just a future student, but also my future self and my potential in sport marketing or management as a profession, with the idea of also what makes a good marketing manager to begin with. First of all, this class reinforced past thoughts about I could see myself working professionally in a sports marketing capacity. I've thinking about strategic thinking, event planning, and fan engagement, and how much I love being in that position, especially as a fan of the sport. It's also very exciting for me to see the other side of I'm the fan watching the sport, but what goes on behind the scenes so that I'm able to be at that hockey arena watching that and all the small details that came into it. So with this in mind, what makes a good marketing manager to me? A good marketing manager to me needs to be someone that's creative and analytical, as you're dealing more not with necessarily straight facts, but you need to be able to understand audience behavior, or in this case, your fans' behavior and their engagement levels. You also need to be a strong communicator, as you're in a capacity where you're, as a manager, you're looking over a team, but marketing is a very extroverted activity rather than maybe an introverted in a sense. You also need to be comfortable making decisions based on your fans, and as well as sticking to those plans if they don't necessarily go as expected right away. Above all of this, you want to be someone that can turn ideas into actions. Anyone can be the one that just writes down an idea on a chalkboard, but you, as a manager and a good marketing manager specifically, you need to be the one that's able to take that idea off the paper and put it so that your fan is watching that in live time. Moving forwards, I want to do a quick reflection on the most useful thing I learned, as well as a quick reflection in relation back to the course outline that was brought up at the start of the semester. One of the most useful things I probably learned was how to apply the marketing theory to real sports organizations and how to connect back real world applications into different concepts that I saw on paper. As said in the learning objectives and outcomes, number 2 was to provide real life application of marketing theory and concepts into practice. And I am happy to say that I feel confident bringing that back into my life now. And it's very important, as beforehand thinking about assignments or thinking about business, you don't realize how many connections there are. But now I look at the connections. I look at like teams like my Edmonton Oilers and think about how did the Edmonton Oilers do this and bring this, and how is this related back to this marketing research? Now take a little bit of time to reflect back on one of the largest assignments we had over this semester and look at which would be the vodcast, and talk about some of the strengths but also some of the weaknesses that came from it. First of all, some of the weaknesses would be I didn't know a lot of people in the class. But the strength that came from this is it challenged me to go out and meet new people, which I did, and we were able to combine a group of people that hadn't worked together before, but were able to come together and make a big project. Continuing on, some weaknesses and challenges that I noticed that were a lot different than even first year when I reflect back on different group projects that I had last year. Last year, we were all basically on campus, and it was a lot easier to meet up because everyone was there. But with everyone pretty much living off campus, it was a lot harder for everyone to line up their schedules and find time to meet. But this was one of our group's strengths and a personal strength. We were able to contact each other. We set up meetings. We set up time to talk and ask each other questions about what went on. And I would say that would be one of the areas I improved on with some of my group skills, were not necessarily in-person group skills, but being able to work remotely and still understanding where everyone's at and where everyone needs help with. Moving forwards, this class and some of the lessons I took away from this class will continue to help me grow in the future by telling me that I need to push myself a bit more, specifically in the reflection portion and also the strengths of reflecting. Typically, I'm not very good at reflecting back on what I've done before and how I can improve on myself. But this being the second time I've done a reflective portfolio, I can see the strengths of taking over a reflection, and also how helpful it is just taking little notes about what you did each day, or even once a week sometimes helps, just making a little notes of what you did well that week, what you can improve on, and then reflecting back over time and seeing the personal growth that you have. And what I want to continue to try to learn is how to apply it more into my life in these reflections so that I'm able to better myself. But also, I want to I want to keep practicing how to apply the concepts that I learned into the real world, not just on the paper, but how I can apply something like, again, the Edmonton Oilers into the real life world. Looking back at my overall semester, not just in this class, but a combination of all my classes, and what strategies I would use to help myself and do differently, I would make sure to stay on top of activities and start them early, especially since I find myself this time with only one exam, even though I have 5 classes, showing that this week in these have a ton of final projects, and it's been a lot of work. Next semester, I want to make sure I'm looking ahead to the future and I'm thinking what I need to get done now to help myself in the future instead of pushing it off like, oh, I'll do it later on and just procrastinating it. Coming towards the one end of my reflection video, I want to just take a quick second to look back at some of the risks I took and what I want to continue to learn, and what questions I still have. Perhaps the biggest risk I took itself might have actually been making this video. As historically, as mentioned, reflections are a written piece of work. But I know myself, and I also know that being a manager and a marketing manager has you thinking outside the box and being creative. And I thought also might be more engaging for a listener, someone to think about my reflection, to see myself actually explaining myself rather just on paper and reading, which people do all the time reading. So perhaps that's the biggest risk I took, is pushing myself to make a video and actually publicly speaking and posting the video, but also because it's outside of the box. With that being said, one question still on my mind, or what I wanted to continue to learn in the sense of sport marketing, would be more digital marketing involvement in sport, especially looking into the future where digital marketing and digital activities are taking over our everyday life. Even in recent years, thinking back 20, 30 years, or when my parents and my dad especially started marketing, he didn't have stuff like personal phones to film videos on or personal laptops. None of that existed. And now it's a common everyday occurrence. So I need to be able to continue to adapt to whatever changes happen in the marketing world and be able to utilize the different tools that are provided to myself. With that being said, this is going to be the end of my reflection today. I just want to thank Professor Scott for a semester and actually challenging me to step outside of my comfort zone and do activities that I wouldn't have chosen to do, such as making a group of university people that I've never met before and being able to understand everyone's strengths and weaknesses, as well as looking back at my own strengths and weaknesses, and finally completing a reflection video on something that I'm not normally comfortable talking about. And I want to thank you for watching this.